What is up, guys? My name is Nathan, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use the HSL color and black and white slider tools to make an image like this from this. Alright, first off, I've got this image, and as you can see, I did my basic adjustments, I did my tone curve, and now I'm thinking about doing some HSL color and black and white adjustments. An important thing to note is you can't adjust all three because black and white does convert the image to black and white, and once you're in black and white, you obviously can't be doing any color adjustments. But I'm going to be showing you how to use each of the three tools and just some things you can do with it. Alright, so first off, if you go into the HSL tab, you'll notice that you have 4 different tabs that you can select from. You have hue, saturation, luminance, and all. I tend to go, when I'm editing with the HSL sliders, I tend to go with each individual tab at once, just so I can get a more fine adjustment. So starting off, you'll notice that right here at the top you have a tool that allows you to adjust the hue or saturation or luminance of any color that you drag the mouse over. So if you see here, I have this green grass down here. I have this tool in my hand. If I just click, drag down, it adjusts the hue. Over here, as you can see, it's picking the yellow and the green hues because grass is not all green, as you can see. It's adjusting the yellow and the green hues towards a more yellow and pinkish. So if you drag up, then it does the exact opposite. So I think for this photo, I'm going to go for a little bit of a saturated look. So I'm going to drag right about there. Alright, so if you see over here, I've got a sky, and it's kind of a purplish pink with some orange mixed in. So I think I'm just going to increase the hue downward a bit towards the blues. That looks good. If you can see it going the other way makes it a bit more fuchsia and pink. So I think I want a bit more of a blue sky with the clouds. Alright, cool. You can also adjust these sliders individually by picking out single colors. So if you adjust the reds, it'll probably adjust the bricks here on the school. Yep, it'll shift it towards, a pinkish if you go to the left, and then yellowish if you go to the right. But I think that's pretty good how it is, and you can go through each of these color ranges and make fine-tune adjustments. As you can see, magenta, sometimes when you have sunsets, see over here, it's kind of adjusting the magenta hues. A bit more fuchsia on that side, and then a bit more of a red on that side. So I think I'm just going to adjust it up a little bit. These are really fine adjustments, and I found myself not using them as much, and I just tend to use more of the saturation and luminance adjustments when I'm doing it. But that's just me. If you have a really messed up color balance, then you might want to use the hue adjustments, but usually I just tend to stick to saturation and luminance. Alright, so moving on, you have saturation, and this is pretty much the exact same thing as you'll find up here in the basic tab, saturation, except this is the global adjustment for saturation. And this down here, these are the individual adjustments for each color range. So as you can see here, if we adjust the red's saturation down, the school becomes more of a gray scale, and all the bricks, they become more of a dark gray. And if you drag it up, it becomes a very red image. As you can see here, it's really horrible banding between the clouds and part of the school up here. And you can adjust saturation based on colors a lot easier if you do it in the HSL slider. Alright, so I'm just going to drag down the saturation a little bit. I think it's a bit too much on the school. As you can see down here in the orange and yellows, most of your sunsets will have these two colors in it, and sometimes you'll be adjusting your grass colors as well. So typically if it's a sunset, I like to increase the saturation just a little bit. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't prefer the oversaturated looking sunset images that you get when you Google search sunset. So I'm just going to increase the saturation a little bit. As you can see, it's more affecting the school here, right down here in the weeds and these side panels. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit, maybe about +7. And then the yellows, this affects more of the grass. As you can see, this sunset isn't really an orange or yellow hue. It's more of a purple and magenta. But I think I'm just going to adjust the yellows up a little bit. And then down in the greens, this is obviously most of the grass tones, along with the yellows. If you want a green grass, you can really crank that up, or if you want a less saturated grass, crank it down. So I think I'm just gonna increase it to about +7 or so. Aquas, nothing really in this image for aquas to adjust, so I'm just gonna leave that there. Blues in the sky, obviously. See up here, you've got a lot of sky that's pretty bland, but if you adjust the blues, you can make that a bit more saturated. So I think I'll just saturate a little bit. It's starting to look a bit oversaturated to me, and this isn't really my style of images, but just to demonstrate how to use these sliders, I'm going to really overbake this image. Alright, and then down in the purples, you'll see most of the sunset is purple. So if you just adjust that, you can change the saturation of the sunset. So I think it's a bit strong, so maybe -4 or so. And the magentas is the highlighted areas in the sunset. So you just maybe decrease or increase those a little bit. That looks good. Alright, and then Luminance, this is probably my favorite part of the HSL tool. This is the one I found myself using most often because it's a way to adjust essentially highlights without touching the highlight slider. As you can see up here, my highlights is at -31, and if I go all the way down, it just takes out a bit of the highlights from up here. And if I go way up, it makes it kind of a washed out image. So put that back to how it was. And then we go back down here. You can see that if I adjust the luminance of, let's say, the blues, which is up here, you would see that it also affects that without affecting any other part of the image. So I prefer using this to the highlights when I'm trying to really fine-tune something in my image, especially with sunsets, because when you drag down the highlights in order to properly expose for a sunset, oftentimes you'll leave things that need the highlights, like this building here, a bit washed out and not that good looking. So if you're trying to fine-tune something like a sunset or a sky, I would recommend using the luminance in the HSL slider. So you don't want to go too far in any of these tools. Like I said, anything in Lightroom is overdoable, and if you go way down here, you'll see that you get some crazy sharp edges because when you adjust these, you don't want to go very far. So typically I'll go right about here. I think that looks pretty good. Adds more blue into the image and just looks a bit nicer. You can also decrease the aquas because they're also part of the sunset, although it's not as huge of a part. Alright, and then down here we've got the greens for the grass, so I think I want to increase the luminance of the grass just to give it more of a pop, I guess. So just a little bit, increase it. And then the yellow is obviously a more part of the grass, increase that as well. As you can see, this is changing my exposure. Up here in the histogram, you'll see all the different colors, and then the exposure. As I slide this, the yellows, it brings up the highlights in that color. And when I do that, it increases the exposure. So this is another good way to adjust your exposure without doing anything in basic. Kind of a weird way to do it, but if you want to do it like that, you can certainly do that. Alright, so I think right about there looks pretty good. Orange is going to affect part of the school here at the bottom, and then these colors over here. So slide that down a little bit. Maybe slide it up actually. No, I'll slide it down just a little bit. Right, and then right here in the reds, the bricks obviously, and part of the sky, you can see it here adjusting on the extreme. So I'm just going to leave that how it is, not adjust those. Alright, and so far you can see that just using the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders, we've changed from this to this. We've kind of taken some of the saturation out, but I think it looks a bit nicer how it is like this. That's just my opinion. Alright, and then over here in the All tab, you'll see that you get hue, saturation, and luminance all stacked on top of each other in separate arrays, but you can still adjust all of them within one view. And you'll see that also you have the pickers for each of these adjustments, so you can just click on that, and let's say you want to adjust the luminance of the grass again, you just click on the grass, drag it up, and that's fine. And then maybe you want to adjust the luminance of this cloud, you just pick that, drag it down, and it decreases, drag it up, and it increases. Alright, so that's a pretty fast rundown on everything you can do with the HSL slider. Moving into color, this is just pretty much the exact same thing as HSL. It's just another layout for it. As you can see up here, we have different color pickers, and if you just select all, you can see all the different colors with hue, saturation, and luminance also known as HSL, and you can just adjust these again like you wanted to through here. It's just another interface. You'll also notice that when you adjust using the HSL sliders, the color sliders are also the same exact way. So in our reds, you'll see that we just adjusted the saturation by -7 and didn't touch anything else. So if we will go over to the HSL, you'll see that with our reds, we have a hue of 0, saturation of -7, like I said, and then luminance of 0. So you can see that it's the exact same adjustments that you made over there, and when you adjust here, it also makes the adjustments over there. So saturation down to -100, and then down to saturation, red is now -100. So it's just something to keep in mind. That was at -7. That's good enough. All right, and then it's just another way to adjust these with a different layout. All right, in black and white, this is just another way to change your image to black and white, as you can do up in the basic tab. When you adjust these, though, it changes how the contrast of the image appears. When it goes into black and white, you'll see that, is there a split tone on this? There is a split tone. All right, so I'm going to take that off real fast. Okay, that's kind of weird. So you see what that did? That's another video. I will leave that on for now, just because I don't want to have to go and redo that. All right, so as you can see, it makes a big difference, split toning. All right, so over in the black and white tab, like I was saying, don't mind like the yellowish tint to the entirety of the image. This will still affect everything how it's supposed to. All right, you can see that this affects the mix of the colors, and how you mix the colors increases or decreases the contrast. So this tends to act a bit more like the luminance sliders, how it, just like I said, it can increase or decrease the contrast. As you can see, if I adjust the reds here, the bricks and part of the sky, the contrast in the bricks in the building, they increase, and it makes it just a more contrasted image as opposed to going way up here. So by doing this, you can really choose how the contrast changes when you are in black and white, and it's just a very accurate and fine-tuning way to change these things. All right, so yellow, as you can see, if you want more of a contrast, maybe I'll just increase the yellows a little bit from what they were, or the oranges, sorry. Yellows, that's obviously in our ground. I think maybe I'll go up a little bit, maybe a bit brighter than the school. Yeah, just like that. Maybe decrease the oranges again, just so it has a bit of contrast from the grass and then the building. All right, and then greens, maybe down a little bit. Yeah, all right, and then aquas, this is just a little bit of our sky. That doesn't really affect much, so I'm just going to leave it there. And then the blues, this is going to affect up here. So you can see if I drag the blues down, usually skies don't have that much contrast, and that looks really bad how it's way down. But as you can see, we can really adjust the contrast in our black and white images by doing this. So maybe I want a bit more contrast in the sky, I'll just bring it down like that. All right, purples, this is going to affect the contrast in our clouds, because if you remember, in our color, our clouds were purple. So if we bring that down, you'll see that all these blacks get introduced into the clouds, and it makes a more contrasted image, but it also makes a very hard edge. This is just another example of going way too far with one of these sliders. So I'm just going to put it right about there, because I want a little bit darker clouds, just so you can see them more. And the magentas is going to be the highlights of the clouds, so maybe go up with those. All right, and then you can see here we also have another picker adjustment, so you can just choose different parts of your image to adjust. So let's say the building, I want it a bit brighter here, and then it just increases the brightness. And then maybe down here in the grass, a bit darker, all right, and then the clouds a bit brighter, and then the sky just a little bit darker. All right, so you can see that's just another way to fine-tune your black and whites. All right, and at the bottom of the tab here, you see that there's an auto button. It automatically does that when you switch over to black and white. So I'm just gonna leave it how I did that. All right, so that's a pretty fast rundown on the HSL color and black and white adjustments in Lightroom. I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching.